everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted more greatness in your life, then do we have the recipe show for you. Today I'll be talking with John David Mann, an award-winning best-selling author and one of the most motivational authors out there, about his latest co-creation and culinary delight, the recipe. That's just what I want to talk with him about today, about how to spice up your life and find the love and greatness you desire. That, plus we'll talk about the power of consommé, the best way to peel onions, the culinary Olympics, the importance of mise en place, Cajun cooks and the Holy Trinity, and what in the world, gotcha, a Coke and a hot dog have to do with anything. So welcome back to the show, John. Are you ready to shine?
I certainly was already, but after that introduction, I'm ready to shine times 10, yes.
Woo! Perfect. So before we dive right into things, can you tell us about your 17-year-old poodle, Ben, who's on the screen behind me?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
And we'll do that there. I've disappeared for a moment so we can see Ben.
This is Ben, my dog, our dog, posing as the author Neil Gaiman. I think that's what he's doing anyway.
Well, I like his fashion sense and his goggles.
He likes it too. He likes it too. So here's the story. Here's the short story on this.
Yes.
Ben got very ill this summer, and he got so sick that this dog and my wife are just bonded at the hip. They're so close. He got so sick that we actually, one vet told us we had to put him down. It's like it was over. He was in pain. It was just awful. And to make a very long story short, we got a different opinion. Mm-hmm. It was a better opinion, and discovered that what they thought was wrong with him wasn't wrong with him at all. It was a lot of arthritis and this and that. They put him on different meds that he tolerated very beautifully, and they said he needs some laser treatment on his back. They brought him in for laser therapy and put him in those goggles. And that's where he is right now behind you. And he's here we are months later, and he's galloping around the house. It's like having literally a new lease on life. We call it his bonus round.
I love it. And I've had one dog that made it over 17 years of age, another dog that made it just under 17. And so when somebody comes to me and their dog is 7, 8, 9 years old, and they're getting old now. And I'm like, oh, you have no idea. They're a pup.
Yeah.
Work them out.
That's it. Yeah. Feed him good food.
Absolutely. In fact, we learned that years ago. I dated a girl who went to, CSU veterinary school. And they said when they would do, unfortunately, but it was necessary for the studies, cadaver studies, they could tell which dogs ate what kind of food by what they found inside. And it's that important.
Yeah. We feed, we're going to be talking about cooking today, but I'll start out by saying the food we make for these dogs, you would be happy to sit down and have it on a plate because it's just gourmet, delicious, fantastic, so good for them. Lots of seaweed in there, lots of organic vegetables. It's amazing stuff. So they're going to live to be, a doggy 100. Maybe they already are.
I love it. And you're making me think now. My wife, the producer's just left town, and I've got to prepare the raw kitty food, and I've got to make sure to put on just the right, I forgot about this, just the right dash of what do you call it, probiotics in their food, along with everything else, so that they are the world's happiest, healthy kitties as well.
Excellent. Listen to the two of us. I love it.
We're crazy in the greatest way.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. These animals, they deserve it.
They do, because it's unconditional love. What more can you ask for?
Yeah. You know the book, The Go-Giver, Bob Berg and I wrote? We both believe that animals are like the embodiment of the go-givers. Human beings try to get close. So we'll see what we can do.
Excellent. And I hear you have another book coming out soon. Now we're going to talk about the recipe today, but you have another book coming out with some four-leggers in it too.
It is true, I confess. Bob and I, we put together the next parable in the Go-Giver series, coming out next April. Yep. It's called The Go-Giver Influencer. You can already see it on Amazon. And in the book, there is a very large dog named Solomon, and there is a Russian blue cat named, well, I can't tell you her name, but you'll have to read to find out. But yeah,
writing those characters. Sounds like it'd be a Natasha or something.
Pretty close. Writing those two characters was so much fun. And the very last line in the book is in our Q&A is that we evoke our favorite bumper sticker, which is, Lord, help me to be the person my dog thinks I am.
Amen. On that note, let's switch gears. We'll stay on the motivational books topic, though, you've written some very special books that are kind of beacons of light for people. Do you have a guiding light or principle behind the books that you write?
I guess I do. And it's funny because the book we'll be talking about, The Recipe, it has a subtitle, which is A Story of Loss, Love, and the Ingredients of Greatness. And I didn't add the love part to that subtitle until the book was already done. And it was in the rewriting, the revising, and there's this maturation process after a manuscript is done. As Stephen King says, sometimes when he finishes a manuscript, it's only after the first draft that he realizes what he's actually writing about. Yep. That was the case here. And I didn't realize until the story was finished, or almost finished, that one day I was talking with a friend of mine, Kamal Ravikant, who wrote Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It.
One of our favorites, an amazing human being.
Amazing human being. And I had dinner with him not long ago in New York. Kamal asked this question, what's the book about? And I went, and I had like 3 or 4 or 5 answers. But when somebody asks you that question, you don't want to have 4 or 5 answers. You want to have one answer. And you want to know what that answer is. If you're waked up from a dead sleep at 3 a.m. and someone says, what's your book about? You want to be able to go, it's blah. And I didn't have that. And I had to think about it. And I reviewed the whole book and I realized what it's really about is love. It's not about romantic love particularly, but it's about love on a variety of levels are thread through this book. And I think that if there's a thread, I forget how you said, a guiding light, if there's a principle that threads through all the books I do, it's love. I mean, I have to fall in love with the story, the person I'm writing with, my co-author's story, their experience or their perspective. There has to be that spark for me to write the book. And I've turned books down where I couldn't find it. I've turned partnerships down where it just wasn't, it wasn't a fit. I wasn't feeling the love.
I gotcha. Now, I must admit, and I'm not going to give it away, but toward the end of the book, it caught me completely off guard and by surprise when I started crying.
Good man.
I was feeling the love.
Yeah, it's so great to hear. I have said this before. If I don't cry while I'm writing it, you're never going to cry while you read it. I used up a lot of Kleenex writing, so that's always a good sign. My agent said, "Make him cry." So
not a problem.
Not a problem. We'll do that. But there is also some laughter involved. People who've read the book, and I have over 200 people have read the book pre-pub. Many have said they cried. Many have said they laughed at quite a few points. But every single one has said, I'm more confident in the kitchen than I was before I read it. That's what I want to hear.
I went down to the kitchen. Jessica, again, she's just left town, and I'm in the middle of reading your book, and I was definitely better at my onion. I don't know if I had the best raw ingredients to work with, but I was trying to taste things ahead of time, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
So I guess before we dive into the recipe, are you a good cook yourself?
I love cooking. My wife is a great cook. My mom was a great cook. My wife and I do a lot of cooking together, and it's one of the things that we do. We take 4-mile walks every day together as our chance to walk and talk and catch up, which we love to do. I love to shop with her. She's my best friend. We do all kinds of things, but cooking together is a big part of our life.
Wow.
So I don't consider myself an accomplished cook. I don't have a huge repertoire. I've never studied it, but I love it. And while in the course of writing this book, many vegetables were sliced. I went for a couple of weeks there when I was really working on the manuscript intensely. I was going back and forth between the kitchen and my desk in my office, which is only about 30 paces. I went back and forth a lot because I was doing a lot of what you're reading about when the boy's learning to cook. I did a lot of that stuff. So the short answer is yes.
Cool. You know what's kind of interesting is cooking is such a great metaphor for life. One of my all-time favorite movies, and it's, I guess, 2-3 years old, is The Chef. And which is interesting because I'm a vegan myself, and they're making anything but vegetarian food.
Right.
But it was such a beautiful metaphor for life, and I felt like in many ways I was reading something as special or more special using those beautiful metaphors. So I had to be careful when I wrote the introduction that I didn't say the chef, because that to me the way he's playing with food, which is how the chef and others are preparing food in your book, is meticulous, it's special, and it is truly an example of how everything matters.
Yeah. It is. It's funny because when this book was born, it was when Chef Charles, my co-author, he kind of pitched the idea to me. He said, I have this idea for this story. He'd been doodling with it. He'd written a manuscript. And he told me the essence of the story in a sentence. And I instantly said, I got to write that book. I've got to write that book. Exactly because of what you said, because food is such a great metaphor for life. It's such a great image for life.
How did both of you connect?
He had read The Go-Giver. So Chef Charles, my co-author, I should introduce him, Chef Charles Carroll, who you'll all meet shortly. Chef Charles is executive chef at a country club in Houston, Texas. He has a staff of 75 that he manages, 3 kitchens, 5 restaurants. They put 80 to 100 banquet events per week on. And so he's running this massive operation. He was using The Go-Giver as a tool with his, he had his people read it. It's a management tool. He contacted me out of the blue and said, hey, I love your book. Would love to have you out to Houston to give a talk on the book. This is not what I do. This is not my business model. Bob Berg goes out and gives talks. I stay home and write. That's my job description. Bob keeps me chained to a post in the basement and feeds me now and then.
No. Well, hopefully good food after this book.
But I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. So I flew out there, and he told me about, he had this idea for a book. This is 2009, so we're talking, almost a decade ago. He told me this idea for the book, and as I said, I you can imagine, I hear this a lot. Hey, I got this great idea for a book. We should write it together. I've heard this sentence many times. And I don't usually
you flee.
it doesn't usually result in a book being written, but I heard this idea. I thought, award-winning chef. This is a guy who's like the Navy SEAL sniper of his field, right? The Bob Berg of his field, and I love the story idea. So that we said we'll do it together, and it took us years to carve out the time and figure it out and get it done and to make the book happen. So this is almost a decade in the making.
Wow! So a lot of carrots have been sacrificed in the making of this book, then.
They gave their lives willingly, and I appreciate every one of them.
Excellent. So let's talk about specific. I want to dive into this book, but I'll try not to give everything away. But what was the specific goal in writing this book?
I think there were 2 specific goals, sort of twin goals. One of them was the ingredients of greatness. I mean, that's what we knew to start with. That's the part I did know about, because that's what I've always written about. That's always what I've studied, aspired to, been a student of. And Charles, too. And this is a guy who went and got his first Olympic gold medal at the age of 24. This guy has been in the pursuit of excellence, since he could breathe. And that's also a story of my life. I've always been in pursuit of doing something the best way. It's what it was that Brandon Webb, the SEAL, the Navy SEAL, and I connected on. It's what Bob and I connect on, among many other things. But so we were after describing an approach to life that is finding carving out a life of greatness, a life of purpose, a life of meaning, a life of greatness larger than myself. Using food as a metaphor. That was part of, to articulate those principles, those steps, those ingredients, those elements of greatness. That was part of the goal. And the other part of the goal was to move you. It was for Michael Sandler to surprise himself by crying near the end of the book.
Oh, you got me.
We wanted to create a story that was real, that felt, emotional and real and would touch people's hearts.
Beautiful. What does greatness mean to you?
I always ask myself these questions fresh. I have lots of answers, but I find that questions are more interesting to me than answers. And so when I'm going into every new book, I always sort of pretend I don't know anything and then discover that it's true.
But that's actually the best. When you discover you don't know something, there's someplace to go.
That's right. Process of discovery. As the chef says in the book, there's no juice in being great at what you do. Where there's juice is finding out what you don't know how to do and what there is still to learn. He says this in chapter 1. So greatness, what's greatness about? we find it in lots of ways in the book, but I think the place where it emerges most significantly is in the idea of service. There's an image on the cover of the book. If you happen to see the cover of the book anywhere, there's a picture in the front of a plate of blueberry pancakes and a single peach rose in a one-stem vase and on a little tray. And it's from a scene in the book where the boy is remembering. We haven't said much yet, but the book is a story of a young boy who's lost his father. His father's just died months earlier, and the boy is torn up and tortured inside, angry at the world, grades going down, getting in trouble, circling the drain. And it's the story of kind of pulling him out of that place and finding his way back to meaning in life. And early in the book, he's remembering this scene that took place years earlier when his dad was still with him. He and his father making Saturday morning breakfast for his mom, breakfast in bed, plate of pancakes. And his father's cooking his famous blueberry pancakes, and the boy is asking him, he's like 8 years old or whatever, is asking him, what makes your pancake so great? Is it the fresh blueberries? His father's like, no, it's not the blueberries. Is it the oat flour? No, it's not. Is it the maple syrup? He's asking him ingredient after ingredient. Like, what makes them so great? And finally his dad kind of gets down at his level and looks him in the eyes and says, Owen, his boy's name is Owen. He says, Owen, the secret ingredient isn't anything in the pancakes. The secret ingredient is who you're making them for. And that, I think, it's funny, that is one of the last scenes that we actually wrote, although it's early in the book. That I added that scene in as the book was maturing and cooking. In the back of my mind, but it didn't actually hatch until the book was almost done. Yep. That's kind of expresses... Yeah, exactly. That expresses the core of the book to me, is that real greatness, there are a lot of elements of skill and technique and precision and excellence and particulars, like the vocabulary of whatever it is that you do. But where the real greatness emerges is when you're in the act of preparing it for someone, whether it's a single person that you love, or whether it's for an audience of thousands, as I used to do when I played the cello, or whether it's for an audience of, a million. It's in the act of service that I think your greatest self emerges.
Well, that is, if I think of you and your work, and I think of, I'll steal a line or a word from Jerry Maguire, your qualm, your thing, it is about serving and helping others as a path to your greatest self. Yes.
I don't know that the word quan has ever been applied to me, and I am just thrilled. That's my word, man! Excellent.
Woo!
Yeah, you got it.
All right, so talking about the main character, troubled youth, all sorts of challenges, could you relate to him on any level?
Yes, and I think everybody will. Owen, 14 years old, has just lost his father. Now, I did not lose my father when I was 14. Neither did Chef Charles. And many of us haven't. But we've all lost something. And again, the subtitle is a story of loss, love, and the ingredients of greatness. And loss is where kind of the starting point of the story. Loss has always been something that has intrigued me and fascinated me. And I say always. I mean since I was maybe in my 20s. Some of us have lost people, have died in our lives. I had a child that died when I was very young. My parents are both gone. Some of us have a sibling we've lost, or a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse. There are other losses. Lost a business, in a bankruptcy. I've done that. Lost a friendship. There are many losses that happen in the book. The most obvious is that the boy has lost his father. But there are other losses as you read through, as you go in the story. There are other types of loss, and what's always intrigued me about loss is what it does to us and what we do with it, what we do with loss. My experience is that people who suffer a great loss, again of any sort, can become bitter and broken. It can make you a smaller person. Yeah. It can also, if you let it, make you a larger person. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but people do it all the time. The actress Emma Thompson said this lovely thing once in an interview. She said, I prefer the company, I hate to have to say it, she says, but I prefer the company of people who have suffered. They're kinder. And I think that there's some truth to that. Not that I would wish the suffering on anybody, but there's something about the experience of loss that makes us, I think, more empathetic to others.
I'd agree. And really it becomes what you choose to make of it.
It so does. It so does. I mean, for example, let's say you're betrayed. I don't mean necessarily in a love relationship, maybe a business partner. Mm-hmm. Or maybe if somebody who you thought was a friend you discover has been spreading nasty rumors about you, or whatever, but you feel betrayed in some way. How we deal with that, well, that's the story of many, many soap operas, isn't it? But that's, the circumstance you may not have had any control over, you may not have chosen, but you do get to choose how you use it, how you deal with it, how you respond to it. And that is some measure of character, I think.
And that is one of the themes of the book. In fact, I'm going to go over the rules, if that's okay, at least some of the rules, but without giving away the plot. Compose your space.
Yeah, compose your space. That comes right in the middle, doesn't it? And that is what we're talking about. You're so right. At one point, the chef says to the boy, when you want to get somewhere, focus your effort on controlling the sail, not the wind. And the boy, it's like, has no idea what that means, although he sort of on another level does. He tries to puzzle that out. I think he tries to puzzle that out for the whole book, really. And maybe he gets somewhere by the end. But you can't control the wind. The wind goes where it wants to. And there's wind in our lives all the time. We've all got sails, and you can control the sail, and that's about it. So compose your space. It's like find that sphere of stuff that you can control in your life. And we have to talk about mise en place, don't we?
Yes,
There's this
absolutely.
thing called mise en place, which is almost a religion to chefs. Mise en place means put in place, and it's how a chef organizes everything on his or her workstation, where all the tools are, where all the ingredients are. The fact that everything you need is already assembled before you start. I have a mise en place for the way I write. I have files that I put on my screen in certain places. I have certain implements and tools, and I have to have some empty space. I've discovered after years and years of writing that I need 2 workstations for writing. One for when I'm starting something brand new, a new chapter, a new book, a new blog, something new, where I'm having to pull something out of nothing or out of the air. And I may have done months of research, but now it's time to start writing. I cannot do this at my desk where I'm sitting right now. I can't.
I get it.
I go to the next room where there's an armchair, where there's nothing around me, and I get there with a cup of hot tea, a blank pad of paper, a pen, and I close my eyes, and it is a meditation. I get silent. I get empty, or as empty as I can be. And it's like sitting on the edge of a pond with a line out, just waiting to see if anything nibbles. Something will, but I don't know what. That's the way I write. That's my mise en place for writing. Once I've got stuff on that pad, I've scribbled maybe a page full, then I take it over to my desk and I sit down with my computer and my stuff and my reference books and my pens, and then I'm ready to go. But that's like control your space, know what you need, know what you need to have arranged, whether it's for your kitchen or your bedroom or your workspace or for sleeping or whatever, and put that in order and let the world take care of itself.
Woohoo!
Yes, exactly.
I'm so glad you brought that up. First off, I've got my mise en place here where I've got all sorts of windows open to control the show with your dials and whistles, and everything is in exactly the same place so that I can, there's the clock. How's the green screen? What's going on that recorder? How's the guest looking? What's the questions look like? Anything on the lighting challenges? All laid out, but then I'm writing books as well. In fact, we've got one coming out not too distant future on automatic writing, kind of going quiet and letting the words come to you.
Yes.
On this beautiful computer that I have before me, I cannot write.
Yeah.
I must swing around and go to my old computer, which barely has what, a megabyte left of free space. And this home we just moved into, we just brought in my wife's old college chair. It's so torn up, you have to put a towel on it to actually sit down because like the stuffing's coming out of it.
It's like Fraser's father's chair, right?
Yes, exactly. I will melt back into this chair in the dark, screen barely on, and nothing around me. It is just me, the screen, an old beat up keyboard, and an old beat up chair.
Right.
And that's where the words flow.
Yeah, I completely get it. It was so much fun, by the way, to go to Chef's house, Chef Carroll's house in the summer. I went. Well, we'll be going again in a couple of weeks to do a book signing. I was there, and we were shooting some video of him cooking recipes in the book, and us dialoguing about it and doing an interview with him. And it was so cool to watch him at his range at home, which is the kitchen that we based the chef's kitchen on in the book. Same refrigerator and everything. And just watch him with his simple ingredients and his simple tools, and watch him. It's like watching. It's like he does it all with his hands. It's like watching a potter make a pot with clay. He's so comfortable in that space and with those tools. You can see he's done this, for 10,000 hours.
It's interesting when you talk about space. The house we just moved from, and I'm now cooking a little bit in this house. The house we moved from, I refused to cook in. The kitchen was very small and compact, and I couldn't help but drop things left, right, and center because it wasn't kinesthetically arranged where I could make it work. Now, I'm a novice. I'm beyond novice. I'm whatever is at the bottom, but I'm working my way up to satisfactory.
White belt.
Thank you. Yes, at least I have a belt. But the space matters. If we put you in that room to write with is it a journal, a notebook? What do you write on?
It is a pad of paper.
So we put you in there with a pad, and we instead said that your wife, somebody is moving right now. We've got to take up half of the room and clutter it all up temporarily, but you'll still have your chair and your notepad. How's the writing going to go?
Yeah, that's tough. That's a tough one. Not the same.
The environment matters. It matters so much.
The chef says when you clear your space, you clear your mind.
Yes.
And I find that to be true. It goes both ways. Your space tends to reflect the state of your mind, but also your mind tends to reflect the state of your space. So you can affect it. You clean your space. There's been this huge movement about tidying, right? The art of tidying. I forget what the name of the book.
Marie Kondo, yes.
Exactly. Marie Kondo. So throw away everything that doesn't give you joy. It was so famous that, in fact, in the last Jack Reacher book, Jack Reacher says, you're supposed to throw away everything that doesn't give you joy. It cracked me up. But it's like that. Make your space clear. Make your space clean. Make your space empty. That leaves room for greatness, in your mind as well as in your physical room.
Absolutely, which is why later today I'm going to the kitchen while my wife's out. And for my purposes, she cooks differently than me. I'm going to have like a counter that has nothing on it because that gives me the space for my mind to figure the things out. Yeah. A lot of what we're talking about comes back to a very basic theme that is woven throughout this book, comes up time and time again. Everything matters.
Yeah, there's a point where early in the book, when the chef is first instructing Owen in some of the basic principles of the kitchen, and Owen's learning a level of detail and care that he's never seen before. And the chef says, pay attention to the little things. When you do, the big things tend to take care of themselves. And it becomes one of the because one of the 7 rules. And he quotes this beautiful Buddhist saying, how you do anything is how you do everything, which is why everything matters. Was it Emerson who said that you see the universe in a grain of sand?
Yeah, I believe so.
It's like an example of this for me is I'm a student of first sentences. First sentences in a book. There are a lot of famous first sentences. And not only it was a dark and stormy night, there are other first sentences. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times is actually only the beginning part of a very long sentence. But the way writers set up a story, this guy walks up to a bar, the first line of a joke. I put a lot of time into the first sentence of a book. I've discovered that whenever I sit down to write a book, I get daunted, I get intimidated, I get terrified. I say, how can I write this book? I finally realized, after nearly 24 books, I finally realized you can't write a book. I can't write a book. Nobody can write a book. It isn't like you're going to sit down on Tuesday afternoon and then by Tuesday dinner, you've written a book.
Mm-hmm.
You can write a page. You can write a paragraph. You can write a sentence. When Hemingway used to get stuck, he would say to himself, I can write a true sentence. And he would write a true sentence and then write another one. Well, that's what anybody can do. So I'll put a lot of energy into the first sentence of a book because I find that when that is set up well, the rest of the book tends to flow pretty well. And that's kind of a microcosm of the way life works. You judge a business by the way they answer the phone. Mm-hmm. You don't even have an experience of their product or service yet, but the way that they greet you at the door, what the server says when you're first seated, the way they answer the phone when you first call customer service, your first experience of their website when you first log on, that is going to color your experience of the entire business. So little things.
Fascinating. You're challenging me. I'm going to be pulling back the first lines of my books, and I'm going to be taking a look at them. I always think of the first few minutes of a movie.
Yes.
And that makes the whole movie.
I was studying screenwriting. Actually, that was my career plan. I have to say Bob Berg ruined my career because I was on my way to Hollywood to be a screenwiter when Bob asked me to write The Go-Giver with him. Mm-hmm. Thank God he did, because I think this career as a screenwriter would probably have been miserable. It's a tough machine out there, I hear. But I'd studied with a brilliant teacher out there, and he taught me so much, and I'm still in touch with him. And he has courses on how to write a screenplay, but he also has one course on just the first page. It's a whole course, a whole 10-session course on the first page. Because he says if you're going to send a screenplay to a reader in Hollywood, by the end of the first page, it'll go in the slush pile, in the trash, that means, or it has a chance. So, yeah, I wrote a blog post in the last few months, I forget when, but recently, on first sentences, and I gave a lot of examples of first sentences of famous books and some of my favorite first sentences, because I think it's a great study for anybody who writes books.
I love it. When you called into the show, I sit here just waiting to greet you and to smile, rather than to be getting my desk in order. Wait, I've got to plug this in. You saw the image behind you, because that first moment really matters.
Yeah. It was pretty funny. Yeah.
You're going, what's that goggly dude behind you?
I saw the image and I was like thrown from it. I was like, wait a second. Michael and I have done this before, right? But this is different. So I was, what's different here? And then Michael moved his head out of the way, and I got the full image, and I went, I recognize that. That's my dog. That's fantastic. He's right here, by the way.
Oh, very, very cool. And that actually setting the stage, sort of like setting the table, sort of like before you've even begun in the kitchen, that will have a ripple effect. Our energy right now is as it is in no small part because of how the table was set when I first called you.
Yeah, it is. And bravo. One of my heroes is Bob Berg. And one of the reasons for that is that somebody on the planet somewhere tomorrow will send out a tweet saying, hey, I just read this book. I really loved it. And they're tweeting for their 20 friends, whatever. And Bob will see that. And he'll tweet back, thank you so much. What an honor. So appreciate it. And they will go, oh my God, the author just wrote to me. And I know this because this happens every day, and it happens over and over, and it's been happening for a decade. And I watch it. And it surprises me that more authors don't do this. Bob does it more than I do. I do it every chance I get. But he is on social media constantly connecting with people, and it makes such a huge impression. It's such a little thing. It's a tweet. It's less than 140 characters. It makes such a huge impression. That's why the book has gained an audience of close to 1 million now, because of the little things, of the way that he treats other people, even online, the way he treats them.
I love it, and that's a good motivation for me. I'm really good on YouTube. When I catch the comments, there's an easy page to be able to see that. I'm back fast. Oh my gosh, switching gears to the poodle who's been given an encore performance.
This is the guy.
Hi, Ben.
Down you go, buddy. Down you go.
All right, let's skip ahead. Rule number 2, improve every dish you touch.
I wish I could show you this, but I don't have it up on my screen at the moment. I visited, as I said, a few months ago, Chef Charles's kitchen. This is in Houston at the Country Club. And I walked in and I look up, and over the doorway, there's this sign that River Oaks Country Club, improve every dish you touch. Yeah. Charles has a little card, a playing card sized card that goes in the pocket of every employee at his outfit. And it has his 20 rules of the kitchen. That was the inspiration for the chef's 7 rules in the book. Most of them I kind of made up for the book out of our experience, but that one is one that comes right from his thing. Improve every dish you touch. And it's one of the things that Chef teaches Owen early on is anything, a piece of toast, a glass of water, a salad, you can make it better. You can improve it. You can give a twist to it, an angle to it. You can raise its level somehow. That's about food, but of course it becomes about everything. Later he says, with every action you take, you can ask yourself, is this making the world a better place? Maybe only in a little small way, like adding a pinch of salt to a piece of watermelon, or adding a little bit of basil to a stew, or whatever. Because everything you do changes the world a little bit. Right, in some way or other, and it could be, as you say, a ripple effect. It could be a butterfly effect. It could be huge, and we don't know it. And then he says, with every thought you think, ask yourself, is this thought making myself a better person, making me a better person? Because thoughts are cooking too. And a lot of us don't realize this, but we have this inner dialogue that's going constantly. One of the first things I did when I first started studying the whole sphere of personal growth and leadership and self-development decades ago was I started speaking my inner dialogue out loud. I try not to do this when I'm walking down the street because that could get me in trouble, I suppose. But
unless you have your poodle with you or a headset, in which case you've got an excuse.
The headset's not plugged into anything, right? But
doesn't have to be.
Now people do it all the time. You're right, with their Bluetooth, right? But I started speaking my words out loud, and it's kind of stunned me to hear the way I talk to myself. I'd be like, John, you idiot. John, you have no idea what you're doing. I don't know how to do this. This is terrible. I would hear myself saying all these words of failure and hopelessness to myself. And it's not like that's what I really believe, but that's what I really believe because that's what I was saying. It's the self-doubt. I have that stream going on in my head. We all do. It isn't always negative, but it's there. And you become aware of it in meditation. But you don't have to be in meditation to become aware of it. And so what the chef is saying to Owen is, become aware of of the thoughts you're having because you get to choose the thoughts you're having. And the thoughts you're having are changing who you are. Are they making you a better person? Because if they're not, maybe you want to choose different thoughts. Even in the littlest ways, improve every dish you touch. Improve every situation you enter into. Improve every relationship you encounter in the day. You might be working with a cranky colleague. Well, you can't change that. But what can you do to make that cranky colleague's life maybe 1% better that day? Awesome. To create one smile, one positive thought, whatever.
Well, this goes into so many beautiful areas. One key one is presence, the incredible power of presence.
There is a moment in every book for me, and it happens with blog posts too, which are little tiny books, where I'm writing along and I'm sitting with that blank pad of paper or whatever, and there's this spark of something, and I go, ooh, this is real. And it's like that's the moment where for me the story comes to life. The book is something that's beyond me or beyond an idea. It's like it's got a life, it's got flesh and blood, and that is often, but not always, in the first chapter of a book. I've written books where actually that spark happens near the end of the book, but I wrote it first. It just happens to come later in the sequence. In this book, it's in the first chapter. It's the scene where Owen first meets the chef, and he sits down for his first test. And this test has nothing to do with cooking. It has to do with tasting. And the boy is like, you want to know if I know how to eat? You want to know if I know how to taste? Like he's all prepared to show him his culinary daring do and dazzling feats. But the chef wants to know if he can really taste. He gives him a Coke and a hot dog. Like, talk about mundane. Talk about, not excellent. Talk about, B minus food, right? C minus food. But it turns out there's greatness in there. The chef has made this himself, and the boy has to taste it. And the lesson out of that becomes that the chef says, I could put you in front of a $300 meal and put myself in front of a hot dog and a Coke, like you get at a ball game. Which one of us would have a better meal? And the answer is the chef would, because the chef says, I've taught myself to taste, to get my expectations, my thoughts, my baggage, get myself out of the way, and just actually taste what's there. And this becomes a really important lesson later on. First of all, it becomes what the chef says is the cook's most important skill, chef's most important skill. Mm-hmm. It's not cutting, it's not peeling and slicing and dicing and magnificence in the technique. It's tasting everything. That's the most important skill. And later he brings it out to life, and he's encouraging the boy to taste every experience he has. He doesn't quite spell it out in these many words because the chef is sensitive. The boy is hurting, and you can't just hit him over the head with every truth. But this kid is suffering. He's lost his dad, and he's grieving, and he is angry. And what the chef is saying is, yeah, it hurts, but feel it. Don't run from the experience. Don't try to hide out in anger and hide out in fighting and hide out in acting out and hide out in throwing rocks through windows, which is how the story starts. But actually experience it. Be present with it. Be present with it. Be present with it. And the lesson, be present with it, I don't think it's ever spoken in those words, but that's really what hovers behind the chef's teaching of the boy. So, yeah, beautiful question.
I love that, and particularly it seems to be a lot of synchronicities. When you talk about something on one show, it happens on a bunch around that as well. They all cluster of leaning into the pain, leaning into the emotion, rather than trying to step away from it or block it out.
Yeah. We talked earlier about loss, and again, back to the idea of loss. For me, the question about loss is it's tempting to try to step over a loss or step around it. And how do you do that? Well, you put the pain away from you. You try to forget about it. You ignore it. You change the subject. You get busy with something else. Whatever you do to distract yourself so that you're not in it, you're in something else. So you just lost your spouse. Well, here's a good TV show to watch. But the other option is to go through it. Not over it, not around it, not away from it, but through it. And by through it, I don't mean to wallow in it.
Right.
Because there is that approach as well. Let's talk about it. Let's really talk about it.
Let me get my salt and wound here going.
Exactly. In fact, let's spend a couple of weeks talking about it. In fact, my rate is $150 an hour. Let's talk about it for a year. No, not to wallow in it, but to go through it. Bring it with you. For me, the lesson in loss is not to recover from it or get over it, because I don't think you do get over a serious loss, is to go through it and bring it with you and use it to make it part of yourself that makes you a deeper, richer, bigger person. And so that's presence. That's, you said leaning into it. And I think that's another way of saying that, is to not try to put it at arm's length, but to embrace it as part of yourself.
Beautiful. You've mentioned in presence, you mentioned meditation a few times. So I'm curious, do you have a practice? Do you meditate? The lead character here, he didn't meditate unless we can call his cooking a meditation.
It's interesting. Again, I've mentioned his name before, but I've written a number of books now, 5 books now, with my Navy SEAL friend, Brandon Webb, who was a Navy SEAL sniper. His life experience set could not be more different from mine. I don't think I could have picked a more polar opposite in terms of our experience sets. But it's amazing how much we share in common in terms of values. And one thing I know about Brandon is he meditates every day. My meditation practice is extremely simple. I've dabbled in specific practices. My wife has extensive experience in meditation. She's done 7-day, 10-day, 15-day courses of meditation. So she has a rich meditation history, which I am in awe of, and I feel like I draw from. For me, it's been simpler. I've been meditating for years, but I do it pretty informally, and it's I have pieces of music that are as seamless as possible, as much like a rippling stream as possible that I'll put on my headphones, and as close to white noise, if you will, and then I go into the place where I allow my mind to get as empty as it's going to get. And it is amazing what comes out of that, both in terms of ideas that come to me, but also just in terms of how events in my life seem to structure themselves. I've had some experiences in my life where I have visualized things and then had them come to pass in ways that are almost frightening. Should I give you an example?
Please do.
So here's an example. When Bob Berg and I wrote The Go-Giver, neither of us had an agent at the time. I had no connection to the New York publishing world. And we figured we're going to try to get this published. We don't know how. And if we succeed, great. And if we don't, well, we'll self-publish. We didn't really have a plan. Wrote the book. And I had really only read 2 or 3 parables. I didn't know The Alchemist, Greatest Salesman in the World, The Richest Man in Babylon. I didn't know any of these books. I had read The 1 Minute Manager. And I thought that was awesome. And so I was a big Spencer Johnson fan. So when we wrote The Go-Giver, first draft, I drew up a cover that had on it, and I posted it on my blog in the last year. It had, The Go-Giver, blah, 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 Bob Berg, John David Mann. It had it said over 14 million copies sold. It had a big endorsement from Oprah Winfrey. And it had said a foreword by Spencer Johnson, MD. So I don't have it here, but it's over on my shelf. We got an agent, and the agent turned out, once we were connected, was the agent who sold 1 Minute Manager, Spencer Johnson's agent. And Go-Giver came out, and it didn't have an endorsement from Oprah Winfrey, and it hasn't sold 14 million copies, but it has sold 500,000 copies, and the latest edition does have a foreword by Arianna Huffington on the front. And when the second Go-Giver book came out, Go-Giver Sell More, it has on the top an endorsement by Spencer Johnson, MD. So that was pretty weird to see that one come out. It's like, oh my goodness. This stuff is pretty scary, but pretty cool.
On that note then, do you do visualization in your meditation then?
I do a lot of visualization when I'm drifting off to sleep. I do a lot of
hypnagogic state.
Exactly. I do a lot of visualization when I'm first waking up. That when you're shifting from wake to sleep, there is this doorway of perception that opens up. It has to do with the matrix of nerves in the stem of your brain, and as you call it, hypnagogic. It's this state where you're half in the specific and half in the dream. And I visualize a lot. I learned this when I was a kid as a cellist. I would think about a piece that I wanted to play that was way too difficult for me. And as I was drifting up to sleep, I would imagine myself playing through it. I would see myself in the piece. I would feel the notes. I would hear the notes. I would be playing that piece. And I would find that as time went by, I would have the ability to play that piece that far exceeded my physical practice. And there have been numerous studies, which we've all read about, basketball players making the hoops versus the guys who actually physically did it, and so forth. This stuff so works. It so works, it's crazy. And so I don't do a lot of that kind of visualization in those meditation periods where I'm getting quiet and empty, but I do a lot of it in my life, waking, sleeping, and I do a lot of it when I'm casting about for a story. I put myself in sort of a vague dreamlike state and try to picture what this story is about.
Beautiful. From there, there's a theme that you don't put as one of the rules, but it's every bit as important. The importance of cleaning as you go.
Yeah. It isn't strictly speaking one of the 7 rules, and you're right. It is absolutely of equal importance. It's right up there, and it's sweet how it happens. I'm a big stickler of cleaning as I go in the kitchen, and the chef teaches it to the boy early on. It's like before he even learns how to cook, it's really like, or before he gets to sit down to his first meal, it's like when you chop some vegetables, then before you go on to the next thing, wipe the piano. The piano is this little rail that goes between the counter and, but wipe the counter, wipe your space, or wipe your knife. When you've cooked something in the pot, then clean the pot. You know, there are all these cooking shows on TV, and I love these. I watch Food Network like crazy, and my wife and I both really enjoy it. But here's the show they don't have. This is the show that I want. I want to see Bobby Flay and all these people and Guy Fieri and all these other cooks. I want to see them cleaning. I want a show where a chef quickly makes something, and then for 10 minutes you get to watch him clean. I want that. That's the part. Because that to me is such a key part. Because if you don't clean the kitchen, it's a mess. I've always believed that if your life is in crisis, go to your kitchen and clean it.
Amen.
This has been a principle of mine since I was a kid. And the chef teaches this in the kitchen to the boy. He brings it back to the boy later in the story in a way that has to do with the boy's relationship with his best friend. He's had a fight. And the boy brings it back to the chef even later in the story in a way that will surprise you. It isn't only the boy who has some growing and learning to do. There are other characters, maybe including the chef, who also have some room to learn and grow. So that idea of cleaning as you go, you know, there's this expression from, I think it's from Proverbs in the Old Testament. It has to do with you never let the sun set on your anger. My parents were big believers in this, that, you know, it's okay to have a fight. It's okay to be angry, but temper it with a kind word before you close your eyes and go to sleep. Because you want to clean as you go. As the chef says, if you don't, then it dries and it's a to clean later. Quick story about that. I did the audiobook for this, for the recipe. I recorded the audiobook version, which is also available and on Amazon. And I was in the studio for days doing it because I did the voice. My studio engineer, he's a wonderful, wonderful man, Garrett Sawyer, who did the whole book with me. He had a lot of suggestions for the book. We revised the book in places at his suggestion. And he's got these wonderful kids, and they came in sometimes to the studio. And after the book was done, he told me that he emailed me and said, I've been editing the book. And my daughter was in helping one day because one of my interns was out sick. So she was in there. And she heard the part where the chef says, clean it up, Owen, clean as you go. Otherwise, it'll dry and it's a to clean later. And she burst out laughing. She thought that was so funny. She says, so ever since then, when we're in our kitchen at home, when we're cooking, I'll say to her, hey, you got to clean it, or else, and she just laughs. That's like a part of their family deal now.
I like it. From there, 2 quick more rules, and then I want to jump into just a brief wrap-up. These things are so important for life as in the kitchen. Rule number 6, commit to excellence.
This comes out of course, my life as well as Chef Charles' life. Both of us, the pursuit of excellence, like Lexus says, has been one of the guiding themes of both of our lives. I wrote this book called The Red Circle, which is one of the largest books I've ever written. It's the memoir of my Navy SEAL sniper friend. And this just happened again the other day. Someone wrote to me and said, I read your whole book. I loved it. It's over 100,000 words. But the whole book boils down to the last few hundred words on the last page. And those last few hundred words boil down to 2 words. And people who write to us say, you know, I loved your book, and here's what I got from it. And it's always the same 2 words. It's the last 2 words on the last page. It says, excellence matters. That's the whole book in a sentence. So never compromise. The book is, in a way, a paean, an ode to striving for the best you can possibly be, for excellence. As I expect you're going to go to next, there is yet one step farther, however.
Absolutely. Rule number 7.
The boy is all about excellence, and the chef's teaching him is all about excellence. But as he learns late in the book, excellence isn't greatness. Excellence is not the same thing as greatness. As the chef assistant Will tells him, greatness is excellence plus honor. And the boy isn't quite sure what that means, but learning what that means is kind of where he's going in the book. I'll give you an example of that. When I was a kid, I played a cello in an ensemble. We played a piece by Brahms, F minor quintet one year. And it was string quartet plus piano. Had an amazing pianist, beautiful, beautiful player. Our first violinist was this incredible kid from Hungary, like a prodigy from Hungary, had just moved to the States. He could play anything. And when he played a passage, it was like you listened to a wooden post. Nothing. Because it was all technique and no feeling. It was a sweet kid, but his heart didn't reach out to his fingers somehow. He just didn't connect. And you see that. You see people who are great at what they, and they're skillful, excellent at what they do, but it doesn't move you. Here's a question you ask yourself. If you're in business, you could turn a great profit. Business can be incredibly profitable. What is its impact on the world? How does it touch people's lives? Spencer Johnson, how I mentioned, he's gone now. He passed this summer. He was talking to me once he was talking to a friend who was another best-selling writer. He said, this is a guy who had millions of copies of his book sold, and he was writing a new book. He was talking with Spencer one day. He says, well, Spencer, I got to go. I got to get back to that damn manuscript. And Spencer said to me, I hung up the phone, and I turned to my wife, and I said, that book is going to be a failure. He said, I know. You knew it right then. Sure enough, the book was published. It never sold. Why? Same author, same great material, same good stuff. But it was the soul, the spirit of the book.
I got goosebumps because it goes back to the beginning. We brought it full circle to the beginning of the book, Cooking with Anger.
Right. Who are you serving it for? That's the special ingredient. That's the magic ingredient in the dish. Yes, the excellence is all important. Yes, the technique, the vocabulary, the syntax, the grammar, the words, the shape, the structure of it all, how you slice, how you dice, how you peel, how you use heat, how you mix ingredients, how you use seasoning. Yes, it's all important, but that's just the vehicle. The message, the content is the spirit of it. It's the soul of it. And that ultimately comes down to who are you doing it for? What's the why? What's the impact? Who are you serving? And that's really the recipe.
Woohoo! So I want to take off my coaching hat for a second. I want to give it to you because I don't want people leaving today without homework to do. What one homework assignment would you give people today to step forward toward their own greatness?
I would say, in whatever you do, what do you love most? Where do you find the most joy? It's like, what is it you do? Now, this could be in your job, but it could not be also. It doesn't have to be. Either way is fine. It could be in something you do every day, or it could not be. Either way is fine. Yep. There's no restrictions on this. What is it that you do that gives you the greatest joy? And then I would ask yourself the question, A, how can you do more of that? And then B, how can you do more of that for more people? And see where it leads.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. On that note, Jessica, my wife, producer, always call her that, even though said many times, she always wants me to ask a question for parents and their kids. What advice would you give parents to help their kids toward greatness?
Encourage them, believe in them. Someone recently said to me, and I don't remember who it was, he said, your child, the only thing your child really needs from you is to see your eyes light up when they walk in the room. I thought that was a sweet thing.
It's huge.
I think that your child needs lots of things. Michael J. Fox once said that the secrets to great parenting are love them, feed them, and keep them out of traffic. He also said the secrets to a great marriage were keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. I think Michael J. Fox should be just like the guru of the world. But with children, that your eyes light up when they enter the room, I think give them love, but also give them encouragement. Encourage that which is best in them. It's easy in parenting to get focused on correcting that which is dangerous, or that which maybe they shouldn't do, or that which you are afraid that they don't. It's easy to get into editing
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to try to edit your children. And in some ways you need to edit sometimes. But it's not where your greatness as a parent lies. Where your greatness as a parent lies is in being their greatest encourager. And the more specifically you can see where is their joy and encourage that, you're giving them the greatest gift you could.
Woohoo! On that note, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
You know, it's a two-edged thing. My answers are always in twos. One of them is time with my wife. I mean, she's my best friend in the world, and it took us 50 years of living to find each other, and several swings at that. Third time was a charm for me. But that just gives me, I don't know how many years we have together, maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe who knows. But whatever years we have, they're just filled with joy for me. But on the other side, when someone tells me that they read something I wrote, mm-hmm. and it changed their life in some way, large or small, I don't know anything better than that.
Awesome. So a perfect segue. Where can people go to find out more and to find your beautiful book?
Everything I do, it's all at my website, which is just my name, John David Mann, 2 N's, johndavidmann.com. All my books are there. The recipe's there. The Go-Giver's there. The Brandon book, everything's there. My blog is there. My conversation with myself that I do in public. So that's all there. The book also has its own website, which is called The Ingredients of Greatness, mm-hmm. With some extras and fun stuff there. So you can go either place and you'll find the book. And it's on Amazon and everywhere.
Fantastic. And if you didn't catch John David Mann with 2Ns.com, come on over to InspireNationShow.com and we'll get you over to John David Mann with 2Ns.com. John, this has been fantastic. This has been phenomenal. This is one of those interviews where I sit back and I go, wow, this is such an honor and a privilege to be here and to be engaged in this conversation today.
I love the way you do this. I start out every podcast like, okay, what's this conversation going to be like? Is it going to be fun? I think it's going to be fun. You elevate it beyond fun. It's energetic. You listen to what I say and you have so much to bring back to it. It's just, I feel like I come away from these sessions with you, Michael, elevated and like I've learned stuff I didn't know before after this conversation with you. It's great. I so appreciate it. You are great at what you do. Keep doing it.
Thank you. Almost no words, but I guess it means I'm doing my job.
I would say.
Woohoo!
Yes.
On that note, any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today, John?
You really have to try the blueberry pancake recipe. It's my wife. It is, and I'm not kidding, my wife's recipe. It's the last thing in the book.
Oat blueberry pancake.
Chef Thomas's famous oat blueberry pancakes. It's the very last thing in the book, and you really, they are as good as they say they are.
We will try them. We will let you know. Although it matters who you are making them for.
Yeah, it does. Well, be yourself and make them for who you love.
Maybe I'll practice them a time or two before my wife gets back.
The last words in the book are the end of the blueberry pancake recipe. It says, "Now go serve them to someone you love."
Woohoo! Thank you so much, John. This has been a blast.
Likewise.
For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the recipe, and begin cooking greatness in your life, and shine bright. Woohoo! Woo-hoo! Thank you so much.
My dog started barking when I went woohoo.
That's perfect. Go, Ben.
You got it.
I wonder if we could have a little doggy mic and catch it up. Woo woo. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, InspireNationShow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!